For the longest time, the go-to analogy for the brain has been a biological computer. And look, that model has been incredibly powerful, but it kind of struggles to explain the pure speed and just the fluidity of thought. So what if that's not the whole story? Okay, we're going to dive into a pretty radical new model that sees our brain less like a circuit board and a whole lot more like a flowing physical substance.
So that's really the big question we're tackling here. Is the magic of consciousness all in the wiring, just like a computer? Or could it be in the physical nature of the brain tissue itself, kind of like ripples moving through water?
All right, so to really get our heads around this new idea, let's first put it side by side with the traditional view that we all pretty much know.
Okay, so on the left, you've got the brain as a computer. It's all about fixed wiring, digital signals, the classic ones and zeros, zipping between neurons. The whole focus is on the connections, the connectome. But now, look over to the right. This new model sees the brain as a physical medium, a dynamic tissue where thought literally travels like a wave or a current. And here, the physical properties of the tissue itself are every bit as important as the connections.
This is a huge shift. It means the brain isn't just some box that holds the wiring. No, the tissue itself is an active participant. Its structure, its density, its physical state, all of this could be shaping the signals that pass through it. The medium is part of the message.
Now, you might be thinking, this sounds cool, but is it just a clever metaphor? Well, no. There's actually a formal scientific framework that describes this idea, giving it some real scientific muscle.
It's called the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM for short. And just listen to the language it uses. We're not really talking about processing anymore. We're talking about physics. BKM treats brain activity as physical forces, stresses and strains that literally move and flow through the brain's living tissue.
The absolute heart of this model is a concept called neural strain flow. This is the big one. Instead of picturing an electrical signal jumping from one neuron to the next, I want you to imagine a continuous physical current, a wave of energy actually propagating through the very substance of the brain.
What's so cool about this is that it gives us a completely new vocabulary to describe what's happening inside our heads. It's almost like a translation stone for neuroscience.
And this new language really helps reframe concepts we're already familiar with. So, for instance, what we used to call neural pathways are now seen as channels for this strain flow. Those classic nerve spikes, the signals, in BKM they're called strain packages. Think of them as little bursts of energy carried along in that flow. And those brain waves, the oscillations we see on an EEG, those are phase waves, which are rhythmic pulses moving through the physical tissue itself.
To make this even more real, think about how our brains learn and adapt. Synaptic plasticity. Well, in the BKM framework, this amazing flexibility is reimagined as a physical property. It's called strain impedance, and it's kind of like electrical resistance in a wire. It basically determines how easily the flow of thought can move through any particular pathway.
Okay, so this seems to work for individual signals, right? But how in the world does it explain the massive, complex activity of the entire brain? Well, the real power of BKM is its ability to scale up.
The model builds everything from the ground up. It starts with these tiny, localized strain events at a single synapse. Then, these combine to create strain flows in local networks of neurons. Those local flows then merge into these global strain highways that connect distant brain regions. And this is the really important part. These highways aren't fixed. They shift and change from moment to moment. That's what creates what we call dynamic functional connectivity.
And this right here is the real magic of BKM. It provides a single, continuous explanation that bridges the gap between a microscopic event that happens in a fraction of a millisecond and a large-scale brain state like being focused or daydreaming that can last for several minutes. It might even offer a solution to one of neuroscience's biggest mysteries, the binding problem, which is how millions of separate neural firings create one unified, seamless experience of consciousness.
So if this model is on the right track, it shouldn't just be a new story we tell ourselves. It should make new, testable predictions about how the brain actually works.
And it does. The model predicts 4 key things. First, that the physical properties of brain tissue can literally filter signals. Second, that our cognitive states are a direct reflection of these flowing network states. Third, and this one is pretty wild, that there are specific moments or windows when physical force could literally alter brain activity. And finally, that we might actually be able to physically tune the brain's main communication hubs. And that's really the bottom line here. The Brain Kinematics Model isn't just some clever analogy. It's proposing a brand new set of physical rules that could govern how thought, memory, and consciousness emerge from the living tissue inside our skulls. So I'll leave you with this really provocative thought. What if the texture, the tension, the very physical feel of our brain tissue is what determines the character and the flow of our thoughts? What if we don't just have a brain? What if we are the physical flowing substance of our own minds?